If you think you've seen everything in American politics, if you think nothing can surprise you anymore, then buckle up right now, because what just happened between the United States and Canada is unlike anything we have ever witnessed in the history of North American diplomacy. And I am not exaggerating when I say that the White House was left completely stunned, caught flat-footed, unable to respond, because Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney just pulled off one of the most brilliant, calculated, and devastating political maneuvers we have seen in modern geopolitics. And he did it by using Donald Trump's own words, Trump's own rhetoric, Trump's own logic, and flipping it right back in his face on the world stage. And folks, before we get deeper into this, if you care about what's really happening behind the closed doors of Washington, if you want to know the truth that mainstream outlets are afraid to tell you, then smash that subscribe button right now and hit the bell icon, because we are covering this story in a way nobody else is, and you do not want to miss a single update. So let's get into it. Now, here's what you need to understand about the background of this situation, because it didn't happen overnight. This has been building for over a year, ever since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January 2025. He made it crystal clear that he viewed Canada not as America's closest ally, not as a trusted partner, but as a target. And the way he went about it was unlike anything any American president has ever done to a neighboring democracy. Trump started calling Canada the 51st state. He literally posted altered maps on social media showing Canada absorbed into the United States. He referred to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau, stripping him of his title as a head of state, treating him like a subordinate. And then came the tariffs, 25% on Canadian goods starting in March 2025. And that was just the beginning, because by July, he raised them to 35%. And then in October, after an anti-tariff advertisement ran during the World Series featuring clips of Ronald Reagan arguing for free trade, Trump got so angry, so personally offended, that he slapped on another 10%, bringing tariffs on some Canadian goods up to a staggering 45%. And keep in mind, folks, this is America's largest trading partner we are talking about. This is the country that shares the longest undefended border in the world with us. This is a nation that has stood shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers in every major conflict since World War I, and Trump was treating them like an enemy state. But here is where the story really starts to shift, because while Trump was busy trying to bully Canada into submission, something extraordinary was happening north of the border. Justin Trudeau, who had been struggling in the polls, stepped down, and in his place rose Mark Carney, a man with a resume that reads like something out of a financial thriller, former governor of the Bank of Canada, former governor of the Bank of England, a man who has sat across the table from the most powerful financial minds on the planet and never blinked. And Carney ran his entire campaign on one simple promise. He was going to stand up to Donald Trump. His slogan was elbows up, a hockey term that means you're ready to fight, you're protecting yourself. And the Canadian people responded in a massive way, handing Carney and the Liberal Party a decisive victory in April 2025, when every poll had predicted they would lose. So fast forward to May 2025, Carney makes his first visit to the White House, and here's where it gets interesting. Trump actually treated him with respect, called him a very talented person, even joked that he was probably the greatest thing that happened to Carney's political career. And during that meeting, Carney looked Trump dead in the eye and delivered one of the most memorable lines in recent diplomatic history. He said, "As you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale, and we're sitting in one right now. Canada is not for sale, won't be for sale ever." And Trump just sat there. He didn't have a comeback. He didn't have a response, because Carney had used Trump's own language, his own understanding of real estate, of deals, of transactions, and turned it into a declaration of sovereignty that echoed around the world. But folks, that was just the appetizer, because what happened next at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January 2026 is what truly sent shockwaves through Washington and left the White House scrambling. Carney stood up on that stage in front of the most powerful leaders and business executives on the planet, and without ever mentioning Trump's name directly, he delivered what is now being called one of the most significant speeches in the history of the World Economic Forum. He declared that the old world order, the one that America built after World War II, was experiencing what he called a rupture, not a transition, a rupture. And he called on middle powers around the world to band together because, and this is the quote that went absolutely viral, "If we're not at the table, we're on the menu." And when he finished speaking, something happened that almost never happens at Davos. The entire audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. World leaders were sending transcripts of his speech to each other. California Governor Gavin Newsom said that numerous leaders from the United States privately sent him the transcript saying, "Wow," and he praised Carney for having courage and conviction. Australia's Treasurer Jim Chalmers called it stunning and said it was widely shared and discussed in his government. And even former Swedish Prime Minister Carl Bildt praised it publicly. Now, here's where Trump made a critical mistake. Instead of handling the situation with any kind of diplomatic finesse, instead of recognizing that Carney had just positioned himself as the voice of the free world, Trump lashed out. He got up on that same Davos stage the very next day and said, and I want you to really hear this, he said, "Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, before you make your statements." And he accused Canada of getting freebies and told them they should be grateful. And folks, this is where Carney flipped the script in the most devastating way possible, because he didn't yell back, he didn't throw a tantrum, he didn't match Trump's aggression. Instead, he flew back to Quebec City, stood in front of the historic Citadel, a fortress that was literally built in the 19th century to defend against American attacks. And he calmly, deliberately, with the weight of history behind him, said, "Canada does not live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian." And he went further. He said, "We are masters in our home. This is our own country. It's our future. The choice is up to us." And he said, in a time of rising populism and ethnic nationalism, Canada can show how diversity is a strength, not a weakness. And that line about nostalgia not being a strategy, that was aimed directly at Make America Great Again. He took Trump's entire political brand and dismissed it in 5 words without ever mentioning his name. And the beauty of it, the absolute genius of it, was that he was using the same kind of strong, confident, sovereignty-first language that Trump uses, but he was using it to defend his own country against Trump's aggression. He was essentially saying, "You don't have a monopoly on national pride, sir. You don't get to tell us what we are." And the White House had no idea how to respond. And Trump's reaction proved just how rattled he was, because within hours he did something petty and vindictive. He revoked Canada's invitation to join his Board of Peace, this new international body he was trying to create. And he posted on Truth Social, "Dear Prime Minister Carney, please let this letter serve to represent that the Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you regarding Canada's joining what will be the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time." And it read like a breakup letter from a teenager who just got rejected at prom. It was embarrassing, and the whole world saw it for what it was: a man who couldn't handle being challenged, a man who was used to people bowing down and suddenly encountered someone who stood tall. But wait, it gets even more dramatic, because then Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent went on Fox News and tried to do damage control. He claimed that in a private phone call, Carney had been very aggressively walking back his Davos remarks, trying to make it seem like Carney had apologized behind closed doors. And what did Carney do? He held a press conference the very next morning and said, to be absolutely clear, and I said this to the president, I meant what I said in Davos. He completely denied Bessent's characterization. He said the speech reflected that Canada was the first country to understand the change in U.S. trade policy. and that they are responding to it. And then, in a move that must have infuriated the White House, he told reporters that he had actually boasted to Trump about Canada striking 12 new deals on 4 continents in 6 months, and that Trump was impressed. He literally bragged about diversifying away from America right to Trump's face, and Trump apparently couldn't even argue with the results. Now, I want you to think about what this means for us as Americans, because this isn't just about Canada. This is about how the rest of the world now views the United States when your closest ally, the country that shares your border, the country whose economy is intertwined with yours, when that country starts actively looking for other partners, when that country's leader stands on the world stage and calls for a coalition of nations to resist your economic pressure, that should be a wake-up call for every single American citizen. Because those tariffs that Trump keeps bragging about, they're not just hurting Canada, they're hurting us. Gas prices are climbing. The stock market has been sliding. The Dow dropped 5% in just the past month. Oil prices just shot above $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022. Unemployment among U.S.-born workers has actually increased from 4.4 to 4.7% over the past 12 months. And Trump promised us a roaring economy. But what we're getting looks a lot more like a whimper. And now on top of all of that, we're watching our most important ally actively pull away from us. And it didn't stop at Davos, because in the weeks that followed, Carney went on a global tour that was clearly designed to show the world that Canada has options. He went to India, he went to Australia, he went to Japan. He struck new trade deals. He strengthened relationships with nations that are watching the U.S. with growing concern. And when he spoke at the Lowy Institute in Australia just last week, he pulled back the curtain on what it's really like dealing with Trump. He said respect, but not obsequiousness, meaning he treats Trump with respect, but refuses to grovel. And he admitted it's not easy. He said you have to choose your words carefully. You can't say anything in public. You can't back up. And in a moment of brilliant humor, when the moderator mentioned the standing ovation Carney received at Davos, Carney playfully said Trump's was bigger, poking fun at the president's obsession with crowd size and that kind of confidence, that kind of wit under pressure. It's the kind of thing that earns respect on the world stage. And it's exactly the kind of thing that drives Trump crazy, because he can't control it. And then there was the Gordie Howe Bridge situation, where Trump threatened to block the opening of a major international bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario, a bridge that Canada paid over $4 billion to build. And Trump went on social media and claimed it was built with virtually no U.S. content and demanded ownership. And once again, Carney calmly got on the phone, explained the facts, pointed out that the bridge was actually approved under Trump's own first term, that it contains American steel and employed American workers. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford called out Trump's hypocrisy by asking if he didn't want the bridge, why did he fast track it 9 years ago? And Carney told reporters the situation will be settled, calm, measured, factual, not rattled, not intimidated, just steady. Now, folks, I want to bring this full circle, because what we're watching right now is historic. And if you've made it this far into this video, do me a favor, drop a comment below telling me what you think about all of this. Are you concerned about where the U.S.-Canada relationship is headed? Do you think Trump's approach is working, or is it pushing our allies away? And share this video with someone who needs to hear the full story, because the mainstream media is not giving you the complete picture. What Mark Carney has done is something that very few world leaders have been able to accomplish. He has managed to stand up to Donald Trump without escalating to the point of no return. He's managed to defend his country's sovereignty while still keeping the door open for negotiation. And he's done it all while making Trump look like the aggressor, which, let's be honest, he is, because when you slap 45% tariffs on your neighbor, when you call their country the 51st state, when you tell them they should be grateful for existing, you are the aggressor. And the fact that Carney has been able to flip that narrative to take Trump's own words about strength and sovereignty and national pride and turn them into a shield for Canada. That is masterclass diplomacy. And just 2 days ago, on March 8th, Carney and Trump spoke again on the phone about the economy, the Middle East situation, and trade relations. And while the official readout was short and diplomatic, observers noticed something telling. The readout said they agreed to remain in close contact. And analysts are saying that kind of language typically indicates the conversation did not go well, that there's still massive tension beneath the surface. And some commentators are even saying that Carney is now being asked to speak with Trump on behalf of the broader free world, that his position has elevated beyond just being Canada's prime minister. He has become a symbol of democratic resistance to authoritarian economic pressure. The implications of all of this for America are enormous, because while Trump is busy picking fights with Canada, real problems are festering. The USMCA trade agreement is up for a mandatory review in July 2026. And if that falls apart, it won't just hurt Canada, it will devastate industries in Michigan, Ohio, Texas, and across the heartland. Auto workers, farmers, manufacturers, all of them depend on smooth cross-border trade. And right now, that trade relationship is at its lowest point in decades. And it's not because Canada did something wrong. It's because one man decided that bullying our allies was more important than protecting American jobs. And here's the part that should really concern every American. Canada's share of goods exports to the U.S. has already dropped to the lowest level since the early 1980s. Before we even had a free trade agreement, that means Canadian businesses are actively finding other customers. They're selling to Europe, to Asia, to India. And once those trade routes are established, once those relationships are built, they don't come back easily. We are watching in real time as the United States loses its privileged position with its most important economic partner, not because of competition, not because of market forces, but because of the ego and recklessness of one administration. So where does this go from here? Well, Carney has made it clear that while he respects Trump as a duly elected leader, he is not going to bow down. He's not going to let Canada be treated as anything less than a sovereign nation. And the world is watching. Middle powers across the globe, from Australia to Brazil to South Korea to Indonesia, they're all paying attention. They're all seeing that you can stand up to American economic pressure without being destroyed, and that changes the entire dynamic of international relations for a generation. This is a pivotal moment in American history, and the question is not whether Trump's words can be turned against him. Carney has already proven they can. The question is whether we as Americans are paying attention, whether we understand that every ally we push away, every trade relationship we damage, every bridge we threaten to close, it all comes back to hurt us, the regular people, the workers, the families, the communities that depend on a stable and cooperative relationship with the rest of the world. Thank you for watching. If this video opened your eyes to something you didn't know, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this with every American who deserves to know the truth about what's really happening between the United States and Canada, because this story is far from over, and we are going to be right here covering every single development as it happens. Stay tuned, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.